Marketplace, the manufacturers will load the car up with a different interior, tinted glass, maybe a sunroof, metallic paint, and helps reduce the value of the vehicle slightly, but obviously it just makes it more desirable in the marketplace.
So what sort of price was this car when it was new, and what sort of money would it retail for at the moment?
Around £9,000 new in the showroom, but this car is just less than 12 months old, and it's retailing at just under £7,000.
There's no doubt the Peugeot 206 is a classy car. It's also only been on sale for 3 years, so cheap cars are difficult to locate. The 1.1L is the entry-level model, and if you find one for £4,000 to £4,500, you'll be very, very lucky. At main dealers, cars usually tend to retail for £7,000 minimum. We've been scouring through the papers and magazines looking for cheaper cars in private sales. The few that we found were a 1.4 LX T-Reg, 42,000 miles for £6,500, or a 1999 206 LX, 17,000 miles on the clock for £6,700.
Now, one thing that Peugeot are good at are producing cars that are fun to drive, and the 206 is no exception. Even with something like this base 1.1 litre car, it's nippy around town, the handling is sharp and very precise. All the controls are superbly laid out and easy at hand, and it's a very comfortable car to drive. Now, something like this 1.1 special edition style, to be honest, is pretty basic. In terms of kit on it, well, it's not got an awful lot. It's got a 5-speed gearbox, it's got power-assisted steering, and that's about it. It's got those windy window things, you get a radio cassette, but no sunroof, no air conditioning, nothing like that. If you want something that's quick in the 206 range, well, the car to go for, of course, is the 2-litre GTI. 137 brake horsepower, a car built to replace the legendary 205 GTI, and they did it successfully. Maybe not quite as good to drive as the 205 was, but more refined and better built. Now, the Fiesta's been around such a long time, and I guess probably at some stage in our motoring lives we've probably owned a Fiesta, or some member of our family has had one. What do you think it is that makes them so popular?
Just that they're readily available, they're affordable, and they're reliable.
Not everybody likes the face of these latest Fiestas because it's got what Ford call their new edge design styling. I mean, how do they actually sell in the marketplace?
Very well, very well. I mean, I think they look a lot better than the older vehicle 5 years ago. It needed to change with all the other new cars on the market. They've come down by about £500 from the main dealers in the last couple of months to place themselves better in the marketplace towards Europe. So they seem to sell extremely well.
So what sort of money was this new, and what's it sort of retail for at the moment?
It's just retailing just a taste above £6,000, and it's new. It was around about £8,500.
So you're not going to lose too much money in the shape of things if you buy these sort of small cars, are you?
Hopefully not, no, but in today's marketplace they seem to be holding their market value better than the bigger vehicles.
The great thing about the Fiesta is that there are loads available and some very cheap cars around. The very early examples are getting pretty old now, but you could pick up an F-Reg base 1-litre L for just £300. £1,000 would get you a clean K or L Reg 1.1 LX with around 80,000 miles on the clock. We've seen an L Reg 1.3 gear, which comes with a few extra luxury features, with 60,000 miles on the clock for £2,300.
Now, I got my first drive of this particular Fiesta range about 2 years ago when we went to the launch in southern Spain, and on very twisty roads it showed just how much work Ford had put in to the latest Fiesta. They put work into the suspension and the chassis, and they really are cars that you can throw around twisty roads and have a bit of fun. And it's a very different car as well to drive and to sit in than the 206. The seats are harder, perhaps more supportive and more comfortable at the end of the day. And it's a very good driving position, excellent steering, very sharp and very responsive. Again, these 1.25 Z-Tech cars are very basic cars. You don't get electric windows, air conditioning, a sunroof. You do get a good stereo system, 5-speed gearbox and power-assisted steering. We're talking about 10,000 mile service intervals and fuel economy ranging between 30 to 47 miles to the gallon. So very economical and very cheap to run in the long term as well. Now the Nissan Micra, although it's sold very well since it was launched quite a while ago, has been a car that's been much derided by certain sections of the motoring press and the public at large. Why do you think that is?
It's just a very small, cheap, affordable car. It's been bought by people that are just starting to drive, people that are just finishing driving. It's a car for everybody that wants a very small vehicle.
So really with this sort of car, you're saying that it's a car that's bought on price and price alone, really?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly placed in the marketplace. It always seems to be one of the cheapest cars on the forecourts when they're brand new, directed at people that want to drive for a budget.
So the enthusiastic driver who likes to thrash around A and B roads isn't going to go for a Nissan Micra, basically?
Nobody who wants to thrash around A and B roads is really going to go for a Nissan Micra 1 litre, but at the end of the day, if you have a drive of them, they are quite a well put together vehicle. They're certainly well manufactured, but obviously with a 1 litre engine, you're not going to get the same out, say, for example, a 1.25.
And I guess that's something that Nissan have got over, particularly Ford or maybe even Peugeot as well, is reliability. These cars will go and go forever, and you don't have to worry about major components going wrong on it.
Japanese have always been the forerunners of the extended warranty, 3 years on the Nissan. They're now following suit with the Peugeot and the Ford, but it's been a long time coming. So yes, they certainly do put their money where their mouth is as far as reliability is concerned.
And what sort of price was this car when it was new? And it's now the cheapest of the three that we're looking at, isn't it?
Some of the special editions had deals on them where they were just a taste above £6,000, £7,000 this one when it was new. It's dropped the least of the three, but obviously it cost the least of the three.
So about 5.5 for this one now.
Yeah.
How much further would you see it sort of dropping in value over the next few years?
It just depends on how it was looked after and how many miles it's done, but if it was in good, clean order, I reckon about £1,000 a year over the next 3 years.
OK, we've had a bit of a dig at the Micra. I may not be keen, but many others are. The early examples from back in 1984 are now rare to find and won't cost much now, but look for a car like a 1998 reg. We saw one owner with just 54,000 miles on sale at just over £1,000. It may be basic, but at that price, who cares?
I think primarily you buy a Nissan Micra on price and price alone. You also know that it's reasonably well built and that it's going to keep going and going and going, and you're not going to run into any major repair problems. Now this car is not even a year old, it's not even done 5,000 miles, and at £5,500 is a pretty good car to buy in terms of money. But if you're looking for a driver's car, then this is not the car to buy. It's wallowy going around corners, the steering lacks any involvement, to be perfectly honest, and the suspension, rather surprisingly, is quite firm. It sort of goes through potholes and bumps rather than over them, if you know what I mean. You need to look for a Micra, certainly from 1998 onward. That was the last time that they restyled these cars, and they did improve them somewhat. So 3 small cars at pretty much budget prices. We're talking about £7,000 for a Peugeot like this, 6.5 for a Fiesta, and 5.5, the cheapest of the lot, for this almost new Nissan Micra. So which of these 3 cars would I choose? Well, the Micra, I'm afraid, is the first to be discarded. It's out of date in terms of shape. It doesn't look great, and it doesn't drive great either. So the Nissan, bye-bye. I really like the Peugeot 206. It's the newest of the 3 cars that we have on test here in terms of the fact that it's only been out for about 2.5 years. It's roomy, it's spacious, it's comfortable, and it's good to drive. But it's not as good to drive as the Ford Fiesta. It may have been out years and years and years. This latest incarnation has been out about 2 years now, but it really is a cracking and fun car to drive. It's nice to revisit these cars from time to time, and you suddenly think, wow, I'm really enjoying driving this car. And the Fiesta gives you those sort of thrills. So for £6.5 grand for a car like that, that would be the car that I would drive home tonight. But you might want to think, well, new Fiesta out in a few months' time, don't want to take a risk with that, I'll go for the Peugeot, and you get a good buy for that. That's it for part 1 of Used Car Heaven. Join us again for more in part 2, when we'll show you how you can buy a budget Mercedes Benz. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of Used Car Heaven. Now, some of you might aspire to owning a car that has one of these on the front, a 3-pointed star. We're talking about a Mercedes Benz. But you might think that they're expensive to buy and expensive to maintain and to run. But they're not, and I'm going to show you how. Jeff, when was the 190 first launched, and why did Mercedes decide to launch it?
The 190 came out in 1984, and it was Mercedes' entry level into the market with compact cars. The first cars were priced right. They were the cheapest Mercedes that ever been on the market, and they made them affordable to more people.
So early 190s, when they were sort of first launched, I mean, those cars are ridiculously cheap now. You pay what, 2,000 or 3,000 for them, and you probably find difficult to find in good condition.
It's very difficult to source nice, clean 190s that are in good condition. They are running out now, and it's getting more and more difficult. Something like this is a bit special. It's virtually like the day it was born, and if it's kept in this state, it'll give somebody very, very good service for many years to come. But finding something like this one in particular now is very, very difficult.
So if you're going to buy a 190, what do you need to look for crucially? And are things like full service history essential?
The first thing you'd ask for is full service history. Whether it's with main dealer or specialist dealer, it's important that you should have some sort of service history that gives some credibility to the car. You want to know what it's done in the past, who's owned it, how it's been looked after. I think that's one of the most crucial things. Besides looking at the car in general to see if it's been damaged or had a hard life, I think, yeah, your paperwork is very, very important.
I've got to say, it's a while since I've driven a Mercedes 190e, and this 2-litre example is very smart indeed. This is a K plate, so it's from about 1992, 1993. It's done 77,000 miles. It's got a comprehensive service history, and for £7,000, you're getting one fantastic car for the money. I mean, when you think what else you can buy for £7,000, is there really any comparison when you can find yourself sat in a quality car like this Mercedes 190? Okay, the equipment is fairly basic. You get the usual wood trim, you get front electric windows, electric mirrors, you get a driver's airbag, a stereo system, and a sunroof. And to be honest, apart from that, you've had it. If you're driving the 1.8 litre engine, you may find that they're a bit underpowered. We're only talking about 113 brake horsepower. Try and go for at least a 2 litre like this with 122 brake horsepower. Other models to look out for, there's a 2.3, there's a 2.5, but perhaps the pick of the 190 range for me would be, well, the very rare 2.6 litre engine, 6-cylinder, lots of power, decent fuel economy as well, and very refined and very smooth. If you are looking for a 190, history is vital. Make sure they've been well looked after, get them properly checked through, because if something big does go wrong on a car like this, it could be extremely costly to fix. So late 1993 saw the launch of the C Class replace the 190. What were the sort of big leaps forward in introducing the C Class and the major improvements and changes that they made? Apart from it being a totally new car, of course.
Yeah, I mean, that's the main thing. It was a totally new car, it's a totally different car. The car is bigger, it's more sophisticated, the mechanics are different. All the floor panel is a totally different car. The new multi-valve engines were introduced with the C Class. They're a terrific engine, quite an advancement on the old standard 8-valve engines. But again, not overcomplicated, no problem servicing. They're no more difficult to service than the standard 8-valve engine was. But you get the performance and the economy out of them.
So if you're looking to buy a C Class, what is round about the cheapest C Class you could pick up today on the market?
Well, there's an awful lot of them because Mercedes got into the fleet market with the C Class. I think they must have doubled the turnover of that segment of the market. There's a lot of ex-fleet cars out there with very big mileages on and probably gone past the best of the life as well. So you can pay quite little money, from £6,000 for one that's done a lot of miles, probably been a bit abused as well. But again, for a good one, with all its service history, sensible miles, I think you pay from £7,000 and up to £15,000. You're going to get a really good car that's going to give you good service for as long as you want it.
So high mileage is a problem with these cars? I mean, if something's done 100,000 miles or even more, should you steer clear of it?
Not a problem, not a problem. I mean, the car will do 250,000 miles with very little trouble, but obviously, if you're buying a high mileage car, you're going to put some miles on it, and eventually you're going to want to dispose of it. And you're going to find it difficult if you've got 150,000 miles on. So look for something that's sensible on its miles, 50, 60,000 miles probably. But again, the important thing is its service history. Can't stress that too much.
Now we're looking now at what we've called the old E-Class, but I mean, this is a relatively new example. It's not that old, and it's a bit of a bargain now, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, this car would have cost originally in the region of £25,000, £26,000, and for £9,000 and 40,000 miles on the clock, it's very, very good value for money. And the old E-Class, the 124 series, was a fabulous car. It really was. It was the true Mercedes.
Is it true that, I mean, a lot of people say about Mercedes these days, I mean, right the way up to the latest S-Class, for instance, which they say isn't as well built as the Mercs used to be, going back to this sort of era. Is that the case, do you think, that they have a more solid feel to them, these age of cars?
Yeah, particularly with people like myself that was brought up with this model in particular, and the old model before it, the 123 series. Yeah, they're more for the purist. They're I don't know how to say it really. They have that feel about them. It's the true Mercedes feel. They're solid, they're reliable, typical Teutonic engineering, I suppose. The new models perhaps lack a little bit, yeah.
So what would you sort of typically pay for an E-Class. I mean, an early example. One good thing about Mercedes they don't do is change their cars frequently. I mean, a model tends to last about 10 years, doesn't it?
The model cycle is about 10 years, longer in some cases. But the thing to look for in an E-Class, the same with the 190s, you're looking for its paperwork. You want some provenance with the car. And if it's got its good service history, again, you won't go far wrong. Look at the car. If it's genuine, if it's original, it's not been damaged, it's not been abused, the car will look after you. And as long as you want it, you look after it, it will look after you.
There's no doubting that the Mercedes E-Class has superb image, great build quality, and are good cars to drive. Okay, they're not the sportiest of cars to drive, but you don't buy this car for that sort of thing. And when you sit in an E-Class like this, one of the last of what we call the old E-Class, this N-Reg car with, 42,000 miles on the clock, and for £8,000 or £9,000, tremendous value for money. And okay, they're beginning to look a little bit dated inside. That's maybe one criticism you could level at Mercedes, is that the interiors aren't completely up to date, but for the money, they're absolutely excellent. So you get a good choice of engines in the Mercedes E-Class range. We're looking at this one, which is an 200E. Make sure if you are going for a 200 or a 220 model, you look out for the all-important E, because that gets you fuel injection, and in this case also gets you 16 valves for greater refinement and also good fuel economy. We're talking about 30 miles to the gallon on average with these sort of cars. They're not tremendously thirsty, and on a long run on a motorway will comfortably do mid-30s to the gallon, which for a big car is excellent. Well, I think that we've demonstrated how for relatively small amounts of money you can buy a real quality marque like a Mercedes Benz. A C Class, you need to be spending upwards of £10,000 for a really good example. The old E Class, well, take your pick, there are lots out there, and the car that we drove was on sale for £9,000 with just 40,000 miles on the clock. And the 190, what a joy to drive this was again. Sportier than the E Class, but still with that quality feel, bags of room inside, and you know that you're driving a real excellent car. £7,000 for an example like this with 70-odd thousand miles on the clock is absolutely fantastic. That's it for this episode of Used Car Heaven. We'll be back at the same time next week.